If there are forces destroying your life at this very moment, the most dangerous one may not be outside of you. It may not be a person. It may not be a crisis. It may not be a lack of opportunity. It may not be bad luck. It may be a voice, a silent voice, a persistent voice, a voice that does not scream, but slowly corrodes, a voice that shapes your decisions without you even noticing, a voice that makes you hesitate when you should move, a voice that makes you pull back when you should step forward, voice that makes you settle for less when you are meant for more. And the most frightening part is this: many people spend years being ruled by that voice without ever questioning where it came from. It shows up disguised as caution, as logic, as realism, as maturity. But underneath all of that, its real name is fear. And once fear takes control of the mind, it does not destroy everything at once. It does something even worse. It teaches you to destroy yourself little by little. First, it weakens your vision. Then it contaminates your faith. Then it distorts your identity. Then it teaches you to call a prison protection. And by the time you realize what happened, you are no longer truly living. You are only trying to survive without falling apart. Yet there is something most people were never taught with the seriousness it deserves. The greatest battle of your life will not be fought in your finances, not at work, not in your marriage, not in your environment, not even against other people. The greatest battle of your life will be fought inside your own mind before collapse becomes visible. Surrender has usually already happened in secret. It begins in a place nobody sees, in a thought you allowed to stay, in an inner sentence you never challenged, in a false interpretation you gave too much room, in an idea repeated so many times that it started to feel like truth. From there, destruction rarely arrives with drama. It settles in quietly. It changes the way you look at the future. It reduces your expectation. It drains your conviction. It lowers the volume of hope without making a sound outwardly. Life may still seem normal. You go to work, you solve problems, you talk to people, you show up, you keep going. But inwardly, something is already giving way. Peace no longer feels the same. Clarity starts to fade. Hope loses strength. Confidence feels more distant. What once felt certain now feels fragile. What once moved forward now hesitates. At that stage, fear no longer needs to shock you. It only needs to guide you. That is where the danger becomes deeper. The moment fear stops being a passing emotion and starts acting like an advisor, the mind begins consulting it before making decisions. The heart begins obeying it before taking action. The soul starts asking less often, what if this works? And far more often, what if everything falls apart? Without realizing it, you learn to prepare for losses that have not even happened. That silent training of fear mutilates possibility. Dreams start shrinking steps, become smaller. Imagination loses its boldness. Faith stops expanding. The future is no longer seen as promise. It is seen as threat. In many cases, people are not trapped because there is no way out. They are trapped because they no longer have the inner strength to believe there is still a way out. That is a decisive difference. Some people think lives are destroyed only by harsh circumstances. That is not always true. Sometimes what ruins a person is an inward agreement with defeat, a hidden pact with the idea that nothing will change, nothing will improve, nothing will bloom again. Once that pact is formed, energy begins to die. The will to persist grows weak. The courage to try one more time starts to feel foolish. What remains is exhaustion, excessive caution, and a false version of maturity that is really just emotional fatigue wearing a respectable face. Maybe that weight already feels familiar to you. There are seasons when the body is still standing, but the mind is already on its knees. There is a kind of exhaustion that does not come from overwork. It comes from constant internal warfare. It is exhausting to keep fighting thoughts that sabotage every new attempt. It is exhausting to build something new while another voice keeps whispering that you will never sustain it. That kind of battle drains the soul. It steals brightness from your eyes. It fragments your presence. Even prayer may continue, but without the same living expectation behind it. It is not always that a person has stopped believing. Sometimes they simply no longer believe with enough strength to break their own prison. This is important to understand. Feeling fear is not the problem. Everyone feels fear. Walking through dark days is not the problem, either weakness, doubt, discouragement, insecurity. All of that is part of being human. The real question is something else. What do you do when those things arrive? A dark emotion may visit you. It must not rule you. A painful memory may surface. It must not take the center of your life. A disappointment may wound you. It must not be promoted into a permanent prophecy. Many forms of inner sickness begin when temporary states are given permanent authority. From that point on, a dangerous process begins. Anxiety stops being a signal and becomes a lifestyle. Self-sabotage stops being a pattern and starts feeling like personality. A scarcity mindset stops being a season and starts looking like wisdom. Even exhaustion stops being treated as a warning and begins to feel like identity. That is how the prison becomes familiar, and whatever becomes familiar can start to feel normal. Even while it is destroying you, some people no longer recognize their own captivity. They have grown used to living in a state of inner alert, used to thinking small, used to expecting the worst, used to mistaking limitation for protection. In that kind of life, freedom feels more frightening than pain, as strange as it sounds. It is true. Many people stay trapped, not because they love the prison, but because they have already learned how to survive inside it. The discomfort is familiar. The limitation is predictable. The wound already has a name, a shape, a routine. But survival is not the same thing as life. You are not called to exist at the size of your trauma. You are not created to measure every step by the scale of fear. You are not meant to become an expert in enduring a life that is far smaller than what was placed inside you. There is something greater available, but that greater life demands an inner rupture. No new season can be sustained by a mind still loyal to the old prison. That is why some things have to die. Certain inner narratives must be dismantled. Old interpretations must lose authority. Certain fears must be exposed. Old identities must be buried. That process hurts precisely because it touches ancient structures for a long time. You may have confused your wound with who you are. Delay may have felt like rejection. Past failure may have felt like a life sentence. Scarcity may have started to look like destiny. But none of that defines you. Wounds are real. They are not your identity. Delay is real. It is not. Condemnation failure is real. It is not your final definition. The moment that separation begins, reconstruction has already begun. Even if nobody around you can see it yet, deep change rarely begins with applause. It rarely begins with a dramatic scene. Most of the time, it begins in secret. It begins the moment you decide you will no longer treat every thought as truth. That decision may look small. In reality, it changes everything without vigilance. The mind becomes open territory comparison, enters old unresolved memories, enter accusing voices, enter expectations of loss, enter scarcity phrases, enter images of failure, enter. And before long, one of those voices takes over the interpretation of your life. That is why the mind can never be treated like neutral ground. It is the command center of your life. It affects how you see, how you react, how you love, how you work, how you wait, how you rest, how you fight, how you remain. If that command center is contaminated, every area of life begins to feel it. Opportunities appear, and you step back, love shows up, and you become suspicious. Doors open, but anxiety makes them feel dangerous, even blessings. When they arrive in a mind ruled by fear, are received with tension. There are many people strong enough to endure. Far fewer have been healed deeply enough to flourish. Endurance is not the same as prosperity. Holding on is not the same as living with peace. Remaining upright on the outside does not guarantee health on the moise. Inside, the world often applauds those who carry everything without collapsing, but it rarely asks what that has cost them. It rarely notices that, in many cases, the soul has forgotten how to rest, forgotten how to breathe without tension, forgotten how to wait without panic. That kind of weariness changes the lens through which life is seen. Fear always exaggerates the threat. It also always minimizes your strength. The night looks longer. Scarcity looks more final. Pain looks more absolute. The future looks narrower, but that lens lies. Not every silence means abandonment. Some silences are preparation. Not every delay means denial. Some delays are maturing you. Not every battle proves you are out of alignment. Some battles are building the exact inner strength you asked for. Fear hates that kind of reading. It prefers to turn every obstacle into a sentence. It wants to train your mind to interpret everything through the worst possible outcome. At this point, what you may need first is not a change in circumstance. What you may need is a change in interpretation. The same situation can crush a poisoned mind and strengthen a renewed one. The same valley can feel like an ending to one person and a passage to another. Everything depends on who is translating the experience inside you. So the decisive question becomes clear. Who is interpreting your life right now? Is it fear? Is it pain? Is it anxiety? Is it the memory of what already went wrong? Is it scarcity? Is it accusation? Is it hopelessness? Or has a new awareness begun to rise inside you? Because the moment that awareness rises, the game starts to turn. Real change begins when you stop reacting automatically. Instead of believing everything you feel, you start observing. Instead of obeying panic, you begin to discern. Instead of turning a dark thought into a decree, you learn to confront it. That pause is powerful. Many defeats were built too quickly. A person felt something and immediately concluded, thought something and immediately decreed, remembered an old fall and decided another fall was inevitable, saw one obstacle and treated it as the end. Discernment breaks that cycle. Now there is a filter. Now there is confrontation. Now there is breath before the sentence. Now there is prayer before surrender. Now there is endurance before giving up. The mind begins to come back under order. Every human being walks through valleys. That is not the exception. Loss, rejection, debt, grief, confusion, illness, delay, humiliation, deep exhaustion. Every hard season carries a different name. The true danger of the valley is not only the pain it brings. The valley also tries to redefine you. It wants you to leave smaller, more insecure, more bitter, more cynical, less able to trust, less willing to hope, less available to faith. And when that happens, even after the season passes, the prison remains. That is why some people come out of the circumstance, but the circumstance does not come out of them. The outer situation ended. The mentality remained. The season passed. The interpretation stayed. The pain eased. The wounded identity kept speaking. That kind of prison does not need walls. It only needs agreement. All it takes is for you to keep believing in the reduced version of yourself, to keep repeating the same inner sentences, to keep calling truth something that was born in a moment of exhaustion. But pain does not have the right to write the end of your story. Trauma does not automatically gain authority over your identity. Scarcity does not get to decide the size of your expectation. Fear does not deserve to be called wisdom simply because it speaks softly. Not every calm voice carries truth. Not every retreat is prudence. Not every quiet surrender is peace. Not every withdrawal is maturity. Sometimes what looks like wisdom is only a tired soul afraid to try again. That must be recognized. Without that recognition, people go on, obeying inner instructions that sabotage everything they are trying to build. That may be why so many things begin and never last. That may be why courage rises for a moment and disappears again. That may be why the desire for change exists, while a hidden loyalty to the old structure still remains. This is not always a problem of weak desire. Very often it is unrecognized warfare. And warfare that goes unrecognized is usually warfare that is being lost. Bringing this into the light is part of healing. Naming fear, noticing scarcity, doing the interpreting, seeing anxiety rush every decision, recognizing guilt distorting your identity, catching the past trying to govern a new step. Everything that stays hidden tends to gain strength. Everything brought into the light can be confronted still. It is not enough to feel impacted for a few minutes. It is not enough to hear a strong message and then return to the same old inner pattern. Reordering the mind requires process. It requires training. It requires repetition. It requires inner re-education. Repeated thoughts form beliefs. Beliefs shape posture. Posture influences decisions. Decisions build paths. Repeated paths build lives. That is why the mind matters so deeply. When the mind changes, your reactions change. The way you wait changes. The way you walk through difficult days changes. Even the energy with which you face what used to break you begins to change. A renewed mind does not remove every battle, but it dramatically reduces the power those battles have to destroy your life from within. The goal is not a life without warfare. The goal is to stop surrendering the war before the fight even begins. Perhaps that has happened many times. You entered hard seasons already expecting ruin. You received opportunities already expecting loss. You loved while expecting abandonment. You dreamed while preparing for disappointment. You prayed while bracing yourself for silence. Think about the weight of that inner atmosphere. It can sustain hope or suffocate it, can nourish faith or feed anxiety. It can prepare you to build or condition you to retreat. That is why the central question is not only what kind of life do you want to live. The deeper question is this: what is being cultivated inside you every single day? A strong mind or a besieged one? A vigilant heart or a heart easily ruled by fear? A solid identity or an identity shaped by pain? A soul rooted in purpose or a soul simply trying to survive the next week? Without a new inner structure, a new outer, reality will never be sustained. Prosperity without mental renewal becomes abundance without peace. Peace without vigilance becomes illusion. Growth without inner rupture becomes pressure. Flourishing without dying to old patterns rarely lasts. That is why some things must come to an end. The old excuse, the identity built around the wound, the narrative of incapacity, the addiction to despair, the attachment to familiar pain. Perhaps that is what has been missing. Not another soft message, but a real confrontation. A line in the sand, a rupture. A line drawn against the voice that keeps reducing you. A line drawn against the lens of scarcity. A line drawn against refined self-sabotage. A line drawn against the habit of translating everything through the worst-case scenario. A line drawn against the version of you that learned only how to survive. There is life on the other side of that rupture. There is peace on the other side of that confrontation. There is clarity. There is rebuilding. There is strength. Before any of it shows up on the outside, though, it must become stable on the inside. That requires endurance. It requires vigilance when no one is watching. It requires repeating truth when the old narrative tries to return. It requires refusing to define yourself by one bad day, or one difficult week, or one dark season. Seasons pass, poorly formed identities try to stay, so another question rises. Who is suffering shaping you into pain can deepen faith, or it can feed cynicism. It can mature you or harden you. It can expand discernment or create suspicion toward everything. It can produce compassion or bitterness. Pain always leaves a seed behind. The question is what you are allowing to grow. If pain planted in you the belief that nothing can bloom again, that belief must die. If pain planted abandonment in you, that must be confronted. If pain planted control as a false form of security, that structure must fall. If pain planted scarcity, fear of moving forward, and distrust of everything, then your healing must reach not only your emotions, but also your mind and spirit. You will have to learn again how to live on the inside, how to trust again, how to wait without panic, how to breathe without feeling threatened all the time, how to walk without constantly preparing for collapse, how to believe that the future has not been canceled, because it has not. A dark season does not cancel your future. A valley does not erase your identity. A delay does not destroy your ability to flourish. Silence does not end the story, but exhaustion will try to convince you otherwise. Fear lies, deep pain lies, anxiety lies. They all try to sell you the idea that the present moment is permanent. It is not. This moment is a season, a passage, a chapter. A night and night is not a final address. Still, darkness tries to look final. Scarcity tries to sound sensible. Anxiety tries to appear necessary. Paralysis tries to disguise itself as safety. All of that is camouflage, and whoever fails to discern camouflage ends up serving what is destroying them. So the question returns with greater force. Who is interpreting your life right now? If fear is interpreting it, you will shrink. If scarcity is interpreting it, you will limit yourself. If guilt is interpreting it, you will sabotage yourself. If trauma is interpreting it, you will distrust everything. If truth is interpreting it, you will stand firm. If faith is interpreting it, you will endure. If purpose is interpreting it, you will remain. If peace is interpreting it, you will see more clearly. Perhaps what God is doing in you is not only bringing you out of a difficult season, perhaps He is forming within you the kind of inner structure that will no longer allow the next difficult season to become a prison that is deeper than hide. Relief, that is formation. Formation of a person who no longer accepts every voice, who no longer bows to every atmosphere, who no longer calls fear wisdom, who no longer treats despair as normal. When that person begins to emerge, everything changes. The way you decide changes, the way you wait changes, the way you build changes, the way you walk through valleys changes. The valley may still be there for a while, but its power will not be the same. The night may still speak, but it will no longer command. Pain may still exist, but it will not govern. The past may still be remembered, but it will not dictate the future. Fear may still knock, but it will no longer own the house. That is where real strength begins, not a strength built on appearance, not a strength made for display, but an inner strength. Quiet, steady, clear-minded, able to continue without noise, able to remain without applause, able to resist without handing the soul over to panic. That kind of strength restores what fear tried to steal. Clarity, peace, direction, hope, identity. And when identity is restored, life begins to find order again. You stop chasing every noise. You stop treating comparison like a mirror. You stop living as a hostage to emotional extremes. Stop treating the worst-case scenario as inevitable. You stop making agreements with thoughts that reduce your story. Inner order carries power. A mind in order hears better. A soul in order waits better. A heart in order discerns better. A life in order builds better. Maybe that is exactly what is missing in so many people now. Less hurry, more order, less noise, more vigilance, less impulse ruling everything. More truth holding the center. To gain a lot and still remain ruined inside will never be true. Prosperity. Real prosperity begins when the inner life is no longer under siege, when peace stops feeling impossible, when hope begins to breathe again, when the mind stops being territory, occupied by voices that produce only fear. Maybe something new is beginning inside you even now. Still small, still quiet, still more like a decision than a result. Do not underestimate silent decisions. They build visible futures. Maybe today, you do not yet have the outcome. Maybe all you have right now is a choice to watch more carefully, to confront more honestly, to reject the narrative of defeat, to refuse to let scarcity interpret the future, to stop calling prison protection. That is already the beginning of reconstruction. Protect that beginning. Guard the inside. Confront the wrong voice. Choose truth even when emotion wants to run back to fear. Something will change. Maybe not at the speed of your anxiety, maybe not in a dramatic way, but it will change. No one remains the same after truly deciding to take back the government of the mind in the light of faith, clarity, and purpose. And if while listening to this message you felt, at any point, that it was speaking directly to you, that may not have been an accident. Maybe the time has come to break with the voice that has been reducing you in silence. If this message spoke to you, leave a like, because that helps this video reach other people who are also fighting invisible battles inside their own minds. Subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications, because in the next videos, we are going even deeper into this silent war that destroys lives from within. We will keep talking about faith, clarity, purpose, mentality, protection of the mind, and inner freedom. And I want you to write this sentence in the comments. I will not let fear interpret my life anymore. Write it as a decision. Write it as a marker. Write it as a break from the wrong voice. Share this video with someone who is tired on the inside, someone fighting silent battles, someone trying to remain standing while the mind attacks every day. Because sometimes a single message, heard at the right moment, does not merely stir emotion. It awakens, it repositions, it interrupts a cycle. It brings a soul back to life just before it gives up the fight.